There is a grinding counteroffensive. It's not the same as the counteroffensive in the Kiev and Kharkiv regions, where we saw a lot of kind of fantastic maneuver warfare from the Ukrainians. They don't have the same space to operate because the Russians are so well dug in. Now, that could change if Ukraine is able to break through one, two, three lines of Russian defenses and then break out around the Russian troops and start cutting into their rear areas. That could change.
Reports from Ukraine this morning that at least 9 people, including 2 children, have been injured after missiles hit 2 buildings, one of them a residential tower block in the eastern city of Dnipro. President Volodymyr Zelensky has blamed Russian missile terror. But what of the counteroffensive? The Times assistant foreign editor Maxim Tucker has been on the front line with Ukrainian soldiers.
So we've been on the front lines near Staromaiorske and in a little town called Staromaiorske, where the Ukrainians are advancing, pushing out Russian troops from the first line of defense, and now they're already into a second. It's very fierce house-to-house fighting in kind of small cottages and tiny villages along a narrow road that could potentially lead to Mariupol.
So an important place, an intense level of fighting. Why is it so intense? What is leading to that level of intensity?
Well, I think it's part of Ukraine's push towards the sea. They are now in the kind of midway through their summer counteroffensive and really hoping to show some results. Of course, they're still struggling because they don't have the air power that you'd expect any advancing force to try to use. So they're trying to draw out Russian reserves and destroy them with accurate artillery fire. It's also the intensity of the fighting is because it's so hard to dislodge the Russians. They're really well dug in. They have very good fortifications, very good trenches. So there is just an absolutely huge artillery barrage before infantry try to advance to clear the house.
Does it feel symptomatic of the counteroffensive at large?
Yes, so there is a grinding counteroffensive. It's not the same as the counteroffensive in the Kiev and Kharkiv regions, where we saw a lot of kind of fantastic maneuver warfare from the Ukrainians. They don't have the same space to operate because the Russians are so well dug in. Now, that could change if Ukraine is able to break through one, two, three lines of Russian defenses and then break out around the Russian troops and start cutting into their rear areas. That could change, but the kind of initial grinding attacks is still pretty slow going.
When you speak to soldiers, how are they feeling? I note from your dispatch in the Times today, there was panic, there was shouting, perhaps predictably under the circumstances, but I just wonder how they are all engaging with one another in this context.
Well, actually, the soldiers that we spoke to today were pretty well motivated. They are the kind of foot soldiers that are sent into these really difficult situations because they will stand their ground, they will fight, and they will advance. So we spoke to the Ukrainian Volunteer Army, which is an entirely volunteer unit from a nearby city. So they're quite motivated to take back the territory. And you need that kind of motivation in order to go into that kind of maelstrom of metal. I think, there's always going to be panic because you're under fire and you're shouting orders and you need to be heard. And, the driver that was driving them into battle, he's aware that as long as he's standing his ground in an armored vehicle, he's a target and he wants to get out of there as quickly as possible.
Yeah, of course. I noted too President Zelensky's response to Staromaiorsk's capture. And I suppose this is a part of the war, a phase of the war where victories like this do fuel motivation and can be used by the president to really encourage and determine the direction of travel for his country and for the army.
Yes, it's a small village and a relatively small victory, but it shows that Ukrainians can break through Russian line of defense. And it's only, I think 12 more villages that they would have to clear down this road in order to get close to Mariupol. So each grinding little village that they take is significant in the larger context.
In terms of the support that is required, that is perhaps lacking in some ways for Ukraine, and by that I mean equipment from Western countries, is that still the case? Are they still struggling because of a sort of lack of support or certainly a gap in what they need versus what's being provided?
Well, I think the Russians have just got a tremendous amount of mines, so there isn't enough engineering equipment to clear that. And I think actually modern armies might struggle to clear the amount of mines that the Ukrainians are facing now. I mean, even the US doesn't have that many engineering vehicles. It's not an aspect of warfare that many Western countries have looked at for a long time. Because, the Western countries would probably use air power to destroy minefields and to clear the way. And Ukraine simply isn't able to do that. So yes, Ukraine still really needs those F-16s. It really needs the munitions that can kind of break apart minefields and clear it away from the air. And it really needs the longer range missiles that America has been stalling to provide.
You can read more of Maxim Tucker's dispatch from the front line of the counteroffensive in Ukraine, including remarkable testimony from those fighting about the tactics they are using, I suppose the element of surprise that they're using as well, and on the flip side of that, the surprise they experienced when they witnessed Russian troops actually withdrawing from the small town that they were fighting for. Read all of that online at thetimes.co.uk.
It is